It's so complicated, convoluted, chaotic. It's hard to actually figure out what's what, but it's becoming clearer.
Three law firms on retainer. I don't know how much money is coming in, but I know that a lot of money is going out every single month for Diddy.
The rap legend the world believed was lost in 1996 is back in the conversation, and it's raising serious questions. New reports claim Tupac Shakur has allegedly been alive and in hiding for nearly 3 decades, and sources now suggest he may be preparing to return with information that could seriously damage 2 of hip-hop's most powerful figures, Jay-Z and Diddy. This is not another recycled internet rumor. No grainy beach photos, no random lookalike in a bandana, no Havana sightings. What's different this time are quiet whispers tied to law enforcement, renewed FBI interest, and sources insisting the situation behind the scenes is shifting fast.
Felt like, they had a whole lot of potential. Jay was more quiet. But I mean, I learned that Jay was being quiet because he was taking notes. He was taking notes, observing everything, taking it all in, because, sometimes you're around and you're watching to see things to do.
For years, the official story said the Las Vegas drive-by was the end of Tupac. 4 bullets, chaos at the hospital, and then 6 long days before the world was told he was gone. Nearly 30 years later, that version of events is being questioned again, and the board no longer looks the same. As Jay-Z and Diddy face growing legal pressure and non-stop headlines, a rumor surfaces that feels far more serious than a music comeback. The claim is simple but unsettling. Tupac didn't disappear to escape. He disappeared to observe, collect, and wait. And if recent leaks are even partially accurate, the FBI may have finally tracked him down. And this time it's not about music. Not to arrest him, but to flip the entire situation on Jay-Z and Diddy, right as their empires begin to crack under mounting lawsuits and new legal pressure.
Easy. I heard that no one really wanted to sign him when you were shopping him around the record labels. Is that true?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This was, I want to say, I don't know, 90, 91 maybe. We was, Jay, we recorded some songs, probably about 4 or 5 songs on Jay-Z, and shopped them to several different record labels, and they all passed.
The timing alone is what's making people uneasy, because this isn't happening in a vacuum. This goes far beyond online chatter. Sources now claim the noise is coming from deep inside the music industry and federal circles, the kind of people who don't talk unless there's documentation behind it. These aren't clout seekers. These are insiders who move quietly and carefully. According to multiple well-placed sources, federal agents have allegedly made contact with Tupac Shakur or with someone acting directly on his behalf in an effort to secure concrete material, documents, financial records, phone data, surveillance material, information that could potentially link Jay-Z and Diddy not just to questionable business dealings, but to the coordination surrounding the Las Vegas shooting that reshaped hip-hop history. This is where speculation starts turning serious. The same sources claim sealed evidence from the 1990s, once believed to be lost or destroyed, has now been re-examined alongside new intelligence. Intelligence allegedly delivered by Shakur himself or members of his inner circle. The focus has shifted from dead ends to one question: who has been quietly waiting all this time? Picture it. Shakur watching from the shadows as Diddy and Jay-Z built wealth, power, and an image of untouchability, knowing their rise stood on the same bloodstained chessboard that forced him into exile. Meanwhile, headlines pile up, lawsuits grow, Diddy's legal troubles expand, including serious allegations tied to his business empire. And suddenly, the past doesn't feel buried anymore. Jay-Z's name is now showing up in new lawsuits, and the timing feels anything but random. He appears eager to distance himself from the growing Diddy scandals, even as his own name quietly surfaces in late-night court filings. It's like watching a house of cards that took 30 years to build finally start to shake. And then, right on cue, the ghost everyone tried to bury shows up holding the matchbook.
I think that they don't want, if they was in any of those freak-off tapes, if they played a part in any of those Diddy sessions, they don't want it to get out to the general public to make up their brand.
Now we have to talk about the Cuba connection, because this isn't a side note, it's the backbone of the entire theory. For years, rumors floated around, grainy nightclub footage, anonymous locals in Havana claiming they saw Tupac Shakur living a normal life. YouTube clips of a man in a hoodie, goatee, and sunglasses looking just familiar enough to spark debate. Most people wrote it off as fans refusing to let go. Then a former bodyguard, Michael Nice, went on record. He claimed he had audio and video evidence tied to Fidel Castro, allegedly confirming that Shakur was allowed to live in Cuba under protection. Nice even described a stage switch, a fake body, and a covert escape involving bribes and coordinated movement through the Caribbean. According to him, Shakur vanished again, this time under the protection of a government hostile to the same American power structure he openly challenged.
He called me though. Puffy called me back in the day. He called me, he was like, I just want you to know I ain't have nothing to do with your brother's,
And here's where the story turns heavy. Imagine the betrayal Shakur may have felt realizing the people closest to him weren't who he thought they were, and that survival came at the cost of disappearing from everything he built. Men who built their fortunes alongside Tupac Shakur may have been the same ones accused of ordering the hit that left him bleeding in Las Vegas. Imagine the discipline it would take to disappear for nearly 30 years, watching from a distance as your rivals thrive, waiting, studying, planning a response that only works if every piece is perfectly aligned. If the whispers are accurate, Shakur didn't vanish just to survive, he allegedly turned exile into leverage, quietly collecting what insiders now describe as a deep archive of information on the same figures whose names became linked with power and protection.
Talk about it, man. So you feel like it was bigger than Orlando Shooter Pac. You feel like it's more to the story. You don't think it was that simple.
I feel like it's big.
Sources connected to old Black Panther networks claim he lived under strict security for years, heavily guarded, limited in movement, but far from powerless. Not free, but not silenced either. According to these accounts, safety came through exchanges of information, influence traded for sanctuary, patience traded for time. What raises eyebrows now is the timing. Why surface after all these years? Why now? The answer, according to insiders, is simple and cold. Jay-Z and Diddy have never looked more exposed. Diddy's situation is unfolding publicly. Lawsuits, allegations tied to his business operations, former associates stepping forward after years of silence. He's currently being held at a federal detention center in Brooklyn, denied bail, facing charges serious enough that even immense wealth offers no escape. At the same time, Jay-Z, long viewed as untouchable, is now entangled in legal action with claims serious enough that his legal team is moving fast to contain the damage before his name becomes as toxic as the headlines surrounding Diddy. For years, these two moved as allies, business partners, and occasional rivals, but always as men who understood the same unspoken rules. They didn't need to get their hands dirty. They knew where the secrets were buried, and that knowledge alone kept them protected.
As far as, is he going to turn people in? Is he going to cooperate? If the federal government wants him to cooperate, and they're going to cut his time, because right now he's looking at 15 to life. With all the charges he has to, he won't get out till 70 years old. He about 70. That's when they start talking about letting him come to a halfway house.
Now, with the FBI actively searching for new witnesses and under pressure to finally close long unsolved cases, the timing suddenly makes sense. If the claims are true, Shakur's alleged evidence isn't driven by revenge alone. It's about leverage, accountability, and possibly reclaiming a legacy that was cut short, not just for himself, but for his mother's memory and an industry that quietly moved on after he vanished. Sources say federal investigators are now connecting dots across decades. Old phone records from the 1990s resurfacing in new filings, sealed testimony aligning with recordings that were never publicly disclosed. The old code of silence once ruled everything, but that code has been cracking for years, with Dwayne Keefe D. Davis, long identified as a key figure in the 1996 drive-by, now behind bars and reportedly considering cooperation. The pressure is real. Even Suge Knight has spoken publicly from prison about justice for Shakur, and it feels like the silence that protected so many is finally thinning.
On your own platform, he said this on your platform that he put up $1 million to get Pac here.
Yeah, correct. He was around Puffy, and Puffy made a comment when they was around, yeah.
Still, the rumors surrounding Jay-Z haven't faded. For years, attention stayed focused on Diddy as the central figure, the money power behind the scenes. But newer claims are circulating, some tied to former industry accountants, others hinted at by investigators. Allegedly, financial records show funds moving through associates linked to individuals now connected to the Las Vegas operation. Nothing proven, but enough to make the air feel colder. Intercepted calls from the months before Tupac Shakur disappeared have allegedly been compared against Jay-Z's known movements at the time. Sources claim the overlap raises uncomfortable questions, suggesting someone who may have been more than a bystander, less passive, more positioned to benefit once Shakur was gone. It forces a hard question. Was the industry's most celebrated kingmaker quietly waiting for the throne to clear? These whispers aren't coming from bitter exes or jealous rivals. They're reportedly tied to former security contractors, a handful of prison insiders, and even a few retired investigators who point to unresolved gaps in Jay-Z's timeline around the Las Vegas shooting. Gaps that were never fully explained, gaps that linger. If those gaps matter, the implications are enormous. Could the man who rose higher than anyone in hip-hop history owe his position to something far darker than ambition and talent alone? It's a question no one wanted to ask for decades. The stakes now feel heavier than ever. If Shakur truly holds evidence and is prepared to turn it over, this isn't just another rumor cycle. It could mean the collapse of one of hip-hop's most powerful dynasties.
I don't think they are scared of him. I think they more so, they don't want him to embarrass their reputation and things that they've been known for. You understand?
We've heard wild stories before. Shakur seen in Havana, spotted in Belize, fake photos placing him next to Beyonce that never held up under scrutiny. But this time, the difference is context. Diddy's world is already unraveling. Criminal charges, lawsuits, allegations involving coercion, abuse of power, and years of pay-for-access behavior. Some in the media have drawn extreme comparisons, calling him hip-hop's version of Jeffrey Epstein, alleging an inner circle that managed money in silence. At the same time, Jay-Z's legal team is fighting aggressively, filing motions, questioning credibility, arguing blackmail, delaying wherever possible. The two men who once stood side by side at elite industry gatherings now appear to be moving separately, quietly, carefully, and for the first time, the fear feels real. All the old clues start to feel different now. Suge Knight's cryptic interviews, Afeni Shakur speaking about her son as someone who chose to leave quietly rather than be destroyed. The posthumous albums, the Machiavelli persona, Machiavelli the strategist, the thinker who believed in faking death to defeat enemies. Suddenly, details once dismissed as symbolism feel loaded with meaning. Questions that were brushed aside are being asked again. Why did the coroner's report contain basic inconsistencies? Why did the person responsible for Shakur's cremation retire immediately afterward and never reappear? Why did residents in Old Havana continue reporting sightings of a famous American rapper years after the world moved on? Now, with the FBI reportedly reviewing every fragment tied to the case, surveillance footage, financial logs, informant notes, nothing is being treated as coincidence. The pressure is building. Hip-hop has always lived between myth and reality, but here, the line feels erased. What once sounded like fantasy now reads like a long-term plan. Jay-Z and Diddy, despite decades of success, suddenly appeared trapped by a past they believed was buried in the Nevada desert. Somewhere out of view, the story suggests a quiet observer, maybe in a modest apartment, maybe just beyond the camera's reach, watching an industry that tried to erase him begin to crack. With investigators circling, evidence stacking up, and former allies exposed, the question becomes unavoidable. If Shakur is alive, and if he truly holds proof, what happens next? Because one thing feels clear, if even part of these claims hold weight, the fallout won't stop with Jay-Z or Diddy. Whispers are already spreading about lawyers, assistants, managers, and former bodyguards being subpoenaed or suddenly disappearing from view. The so-called untouchables may not be untouchable anymore. Overseas industry veterans who once lived untouchable lifestyles are suddenly going quiet. Social media accounts are disappearing. Old phones are being abandoned. Long-standing connections are being erased as people rush to distance themselves before federal investigators come knocking. The old code of silence is cracking, and everyone inside the system can feel it. As the industry braces for a reckoning and leaks keep surfacing, one question hangs heavy. How many careers, fortunes, and legacies will be wiped out before the dust finally settles? Now, as the dominoes start to fall, the world is watching the slow unraveling of something that once felt permanent. This isn't just about a few celebrities caught in controversy. It's the visible breakdown of the institutions that shaped the last 30 years of pop culture. Diddy, once known for excess, luxury, and carefully controlled imagery, now finds himself in a concrete cell instead of a Hamptons mansion. He's awaiting a federal trial that could expose layers of the industry many hoped would never be examined. Allegations tied to trafficking, racketeering, abuse of power, and claims of a broader criminal operation continue to surface. His name dominates headlines as his legal team spends heavily trying to contain the damage. Each new lawsuit triggers more scrambling behind the scenes. Former associates look for exits. Victims step forward. No one knows who will cooperate next or how many sealed files are still waiting to be opened. For someone who once shaped public opinion with a single post or video, the shift is brutal. Control is gone. Silence can't be bought anymore. Meanwhile, Jay-Z, long seen as the blueprint for mogul power, is learning that even the highest penthouse can have a glass floor. Civil lawsuits continue to stack up, and each one carries the risk of exposing years of carefully protected business records and private conversations. The filings alone would rattle any crisis team, but what's shifting fastest is the public mood. Fans who once celebrated every strategic move are now combing through timelines, lyrics, interviews, and old photos. They're searching for the moment ambition may have crossed into something darker. Jay-Z's response has been a mix of confidence and counterclaims. One moment framing himself as the target of extortion, the next creating distance from a partner he once publicly called family. If Shakur's alleged collection of evidence ever becomes public, it could shatter every polished version of hip-hop history that's been marketed for decades. No brand strategist can repair that kind of damage. The fallout would be massive. Two men once viewed as untouchable, billionaires with beverage deals, fashion empires, and influence stretching from boardrooms to political circles, suddenly seen in a very different light. This wouldn't be tabloid drama or a quick celebrity downfall. It would be the kind of revelation that forces catalogs to be reconsidered, awards to be re-examined, and sponsors to rush for cover. Entire legacy projects, mentorship programs, and charitable images could collapse overnight, replaced by questions no one wants to answer. And if that reckoning arrives tied to Shakur's long-rumored return, the industry won't be ready. Even people who once claimed they knew the real story are starting to look nervous, because this time, the silence doesn't feel safe anymore. Former road managers are suddenly unavailable for comment. High-profile attorneys quietly leak to the press that multiple celebrities are under active federal scrutiny. At the same time, private jets move in and out of Miami and Los Angeles, carrying publicists and crisis managers who can't promise protection anymore. The old alliances that once held the industry together, the quiet favors, the handshake deals, the unspoken "I cover you, you cover me" arrangements are dissolving under subpoenas and secret recordings. For everyone who grew up believing these figures were untouchable, the emotional shift is jarring. Betrayal cuts deeper when idols fall from that height. And once again, the trail leads back to the unsettling feeling that Tupac Shakur may have seen this coming long before anyone else did. For years, fans have analyzed his Machiavelli persona, the cryptic lyrics, the layered imagery, the album covers that seem to signal something hidden beneath the surface. Exit Tupac Shakur, enter Machiavelli, read the liner notes of the Don Killuminati, the 7-Day Theory, released after his reported death. Even the title points directly to Niccolo Machiavelli, the strategist who wrote about deception, disappearance, and returning stronger once enemies believed the threat was gone. Was it just theatrical symbolism or something more deliberate? What if every verse, every coded interview was a warning aimed at the people who tried to erase him? The clues are scattered everywhere, hiding in plain sight. Lyrics about betrayal, lines hinting at revenge, visuals that blur the line between myth and reality. In one infamous image, Shakur's gaze feels almost intentional, as if daring the audience to look deeper. And then there are the rumors that never fully disappeared. The Havana sightings, Suge Knight's cryptic remarks, claims from former bodyguards about audio and video evidence tied to Castro's involvement. After all this time, the question still lingers. Was it all coincidence, or was the blueprint there from the beginning? For years, the pieces only seemed to fit if you squinted. Skeptics pointed to gaps in the official story. The strange coroner's report, witnesses who vanished, posthumous albums that sounded almost prophetic. People asked whether Shakur was sending messages to his enemies and whether the Machiavelli era was really code for something simpler. I'm not finished yet? That's the unsettling thought now taking hold. If Shakur truly orchestrated his own disappearance, then every assumption about that night in Las Vegas starts to unravel. Was the shooting exactly what it appeared to be? Were parts of the hospital timeline controlled? Was his disappearance the most elaborate act of misdirection music has ever seen? Or was it a last move made by someone who knew the walls were closing in? Even longtime skeptics are rewatching old footage, studying overlooked details, searching for the moment that changes everything, the kind of detail that flips the story on its head. Then there's the impact on hip-hop itself. The legacy of Shakur versus Biggie, West Coast versus East Coast, was always framed as artistic rivalry, not a violent cover-up. Now, with Diddy's world collapsing and Jay-Z's name appearing in serious legal filings, people are questioning whether the foundation of modern hip-hop is tied to something far darker than the music ever admitted. This isn't just about who did what. It's about who knew, who stayed silent, who benefited while the world mourned, and the silence is growing louder. Beyonce and other A-list collaborators who once stood proudly beside Jay-Z and Diddy at galas and award shows have gone noticeably quiet. In moments like this, silence speaks volumes. The mogul circles once packed with parties and photo ops have shrunk to a few nervous loyalists. Music media that spent years avoiding controversy is now digging in, reopening old contracts, examining payouts, and finally giving space to voices that were too afraid to speak. Inside major labels, the mood is tense. Some insiders believe federal investigators are preparing for indictments that could reach far beyond Diddy and Jay-Z. Dots are being connected across borders, offshore accounts, and decades of quiet deals, pulling producers, handlers, and executives into focus. As one former label manager put it, if Shakur has evidence and the FBI has leverage, boardrooms are about to panic. This isn't just about reputation. It's about fortunes built on carefully managed stories that are starting to crack, and the question no one can answer yet still hangs in the air. If Shakur steps forward with proof, what does that do to everything we thought we knew? Does the myth finally collapse, or does it rewrite history one last time? Jay-Z's growing legal pressure, Diddy's empire collapsing under non-stop scrutiny, and the persistent whispers of Tupac Shakur's return. It feels like the stage is set for hip-hop's biggest reckoning yet. We might be days away, maybe weeks, maybe longer, but whatever is coming could make the original East Coast, West Coast era look small by comparison. Or maybe we're still trapped in a maze of shadows, chasing stories while the real answers sit locked away in a Havana vault, in a briefcase, or inside a federal safe house. One thing feels certain, the truth is moving closer, and when it arrives, nothing about hip-hop history will look the same again. So what do you think? Is this the final chapter for the old guard, or is there one last twist waiting to shock everyone? Drop your theories in the comments below. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share this with anyone who's been following the story. The next bombshell could land at any moment. Stay sharp, stay curious, and we'll see you in the next one.